so charming about sincere garbage. It's like when a baby makes you macaroni art. Macaroni art is kind of objectively bad, and, there's no macaroni art, like, hanging in the Louvre. And yet, it's so earnest that when you get this kind of art from a little kid, you can't help but take it and say, "Aw, cute. Good effort." In media consumed by the general public, sincere garbage can be good, or it can be bad. I think back to the early days of the Sci-Fi Channel's original movies, where they were pretty earnestly trying to make kind of a scary film or a sci-fi movie on a very low budget. Sharktopus, two-headed shark attack, ice spiders, my beloved. Everything was kind of ruined with that when the Sci-Fi Channel got in on the joke and made intentionally bad films like Sharknado and its sequels. There's also bad sincere garbage that can be found in the media. These are your smooth-brained takes that actively make the world worse when the ideas are held in earnest. The unhinged Gamergate rants would sort of fall into this category.
What the fuck is Gamergate? Video game journalism?
Oh, they're sincere, and they're garbage, but I would not personally subject myself to them. The message is wrong, and it's potentially harmful, which is a deadly combination. So basically, for sincere garbage to be good, it has to be earnest, the creator of the piece has to be trying, and the message has to not be horrible. Roland Emmerich's recent film Moonfall, perfect sincere garbage.
Somebody asked me what the best movie ever made was, I'd say Moonfall. If someone asked me what the worst movie ever made was, I'd say Moonfall.
Couldn't have asked for a better piece demonstrating what I'm talking about here. 5-hour rants about there being black people in the new Rings of Power series on Amazon? Bad sincere garbage, in my opinion. Usually, sincere garbage in the media falls very neatly into one category or another. But I have to share with you a piece of media so bad and so good and so sincere that I honestly have absolutely no idea where to put this thing. I want to introduce to you the Truth Chronicles by Tim Schaffee and Joe Westbrook. In 2006, while I was innocently minding my own business playing Pokemon Diamond on my Nintendo DS, Tim Schaffee, my nemesis, was teaching young earth creationism at a Christian school when he looked down and saw a student drawing manga. And Tim Schaffee had an idea.
See how the surf's work around.
In the last and bonus Truth Chronicles book titled The Extras, in a chapter titled The History of the Truth Chronicles, Tim Schaffee describes the inception of the series titled The Genesis of an Idea like this. It was pretty cool to see my students depicted in this way. I thought it would be fun to figure out a way to use this Japanese style of art to help them learn the truth of scripture, particularly as it relates to the creation versus evolution controversy. Tim would kick the idea of a young earth creationism manga around for a while before realizing that he couldn't pay an artist enough for the full graphic novel. Yes, really. Eventually, he and his partner in crime, Joe Westbrook, who's depicted with green hair in the sort of author bio portion on the back of the text, would drum up a story and find a Christian manga artist, yes really, to illustrate. I must admit, I've lied to you a bit here, because you see, the book has manga art, but only around one picture per chapter, so the manga artist must have been charging quite a bit.
Good for her.
Ah, shucks, I forgot to introduce our authors properly. Tim Schaffee, you've met already.
Bring your shield?
I didn't know I needed one. A museum come alive at night or something around here?
You never know. No, actually, you remind me of Captain America.
You remind me of Captain America. You remind me of Captain America.
In addition to being a rather large man, Tim Schaffee also directs the Attractions Division at Answers in Genesis, and he describes himself as a Bible-believing Christian husband, father, teacher, apologist, author, and cancer survivor. Joe Westbrook likes fishing. This is the only picture that I could find of him.
This one confuses me because the body of water where you got the fish is not visible. So I'm mostly just confused, but it is a nice fish.
There are 9 Truth Chronicles books, plus an additional 10th that contains bonus material, and we are going to review them all here. Am I dead inside? Don't ask questions you don't want to know the answer to. The first book of the Truth Chronicles is called The Time Machine, and we have our anime characters all hanging out with the T-Rex in the background. On the back of the text, we have a stunning review from Roger Patterson, author of Evolution Exposed, so very unbiased, and he says, rather than compromising biblical history, this story confirms the facts recorded in the Bible and helps the reader understand the biblical worldview. Dinosaurs, time machines, international intrigue, and the Bible. This is the mix that you will enjoy in the Truth Chronicles. Truly a deadly cocktail. What would you do if you could travel through time? And then it sort of tells us what this text is going to be about. When 4 unsuspecting teens from the world's top science academy attempt a trip to ancient Egypt, they dive into an adventure beyond their wildest imagination. Jax and Izzy expect pyramids and pharaohs, but come face to face with some of the deadliest creatures to ever walk the earth. Can JT and Mickey get there before it's too late? And what will happen when they are confronted with the true history of the world? Wow, my goodness. And we have our bios for Tim Schaffee and Joe Westbrook in anime form, which is, potentially the most cursed image that my retinas have ever processed. We begin with the prologue. Just a few more weeks, Dr. Jeff Thompson thrust his arms into the sleeves that controlled the robotic arms poised above his life's work. A few more weeks and this thing will finally be done. So this is your new toy, Dr. Thompson. Okay, so Schaffee has already alluded to this on his blog, which I have of course perused. He has slipped in several young Earth creationist scientists as characters in this book. He admitted to Jason Lyle, but said there were a few other hidden ones. This is definitely Jeffrey Tompkins. Jeff Thompson, Jeffrey Tompkins. I don't think there's any way that that's a coincidence. And Jeffrey Tompkins is perhaps one of the most incompetent of the unearthed creationist scientists, if his work on the human-chimp DNA similarity is anything to go off of. It's not that he's wrong, it's that he's wrong in a very juvenile way. He actually goofs up the math, like math that you learn in algebra, which is insane. He doesn't weight DNA sequences. The startled doctor snapped his head around to see his new lab assistant enter the room. Hey, Michael, I didn't think you were starting until tomorrow. Yup, this is my baby. It was originally built for the folks at the Mayo Clinic to perform telesurgery. We've reconfigured it so that I can manipulate the microcircuitry. Dr. Tompkins is very smart. Michael pointed to the end of mechanical arms, and this would be the cube, right? And cube is capitalized. Dr. Thompson chuckled at the nickname his younger colleagues had given the device. Those kids and their TikToks. Actually, it's called the APEC, which of course stands for a very epic cube. I'm just kidding. It stands for Advanced Photovoltaic Energy Cell. That's cool. You can give me all the details tomorrow since I'm on my way out. Here, I just wanted to make sure you got something to eat tonight. So Michael goes to set down the meal that he's brought for Dr. Jeffrey Tompkins on his desk and realizes that he has to find a spot amongst all the trial cubes, which are laying strewn about the desk. obscuring pictures of Dr. Tompkins' family, which of course is bad. He's not a good father. And Michael is concerned and says, maybe you ought to spend less time in the lab, more time with your family. And then Michael eventually leaves. He sighed as Michael left the room. Moving over to the desk to eat his dinner, he glanced at the picture. Just a few more weeks, guys. If this thing works, I can retire and we can spend all our time together. He's looking at the picture of his son, Jax, and his wife, Ellen. After the much-needed meal, he returned to his work with renewed resolve. While focused on the giant high-definition screen in front of him, he's very wealthy, which provided a magnified image of the intricate circuitry of APEC. An unexpected movement caught his attention. What was that? No one's supposed to be in here this late, he thought. He glanced at the security monitor and noticed two shadowy figures disappear from view. Silently, Dr. Thompson removed his arms from the robotic sleeve, stood, and hurried towards the alarm on the far wall. But as he reached for the button, a sharp pain ripped across his head. He fell forward, and everything went black. The Cube Bandits! Okay, so we get a time skip. 3.5 years later, Chapter 1, and we get some very excellent drawings. I actually don't think the art is that bad. It does remind me a lot, though, of if you ever went to Barnes & Noble and looked at like the how to draw books next to all the Christopher Hart stuff. There were a lot of like how to draw anime and manga, and these remind me of like what you might learn to draw in one of those. I'm not sure why the old professor looks like this, but that feels a little bit strange to me. After pressing his thumb to the biometric scanner that opened his locker, Jax Thompson began rummaging madly through the contents. Amid many loose papers, textbooks, candy bar wrappers, and his jacket and backpack, he knew he should be able to find his physics homework. Where is it? If I weren't spending so much time trying to solve the problems with that machine, I would probably remember where I put it. He patted his pockets, rifled through the books, and began to pull at his hair in frustration. About to give up, he noticed the corner of his assignment sticking out of a book. As he reached for it, the sound of running footsteps seized his attention. So what do we know about Jax? Well, just like his dad, he's very disorganized, but very smart. And he goes to a cool, high-tech school that sounds like it would be sort of the setting for a hip new Disney Channel show where they use thumbprint scans to get into their lockers. But he is very intelligent and clearly is just a bit scatterbrained. Jax, Isaiah Weber, his best friend since 7th grade, skidded to a halt just before crashing into him. I figured it out! Jax turned and grabbed his friend's shoulders. What do you mean you figured it out? I mean, I know what's wrong with the machine. Jax's hold tightened as he looked into his friend's excited face. Izzy, so Izzy is what he calls his friend Isaiah, are you saying that this is going to work? Yeah, I think so, he said with just a hint more caution. Obviously, we won't know until we test it, but the numbers all make sense now. Jax's mind raced with the implications. Can you come over right after school? We really should be getting the testing done tonight. Izzy nodded. I should be able to. I just have to call my mom and let her know where I'm going to be. This is going to be awesome. And then Jax thinks to himself, if he's right, tonight we could actually be traveling through time. And I wrote, oh, okay. So these two, I suppose they're 8th graders, have picked up on the work of the illustrious Jeff Thompson and his work with the time machine. So Jax manages to make it to class on time. One of his favorite teachers, Mr. Lee, is running the class. He sits in the back and sort of swoons over JT, who is a young woman sitting sort of in one of the front rows, like a brown noser, but he does think she's cute. He describes her as a cute brunette with pigtails. And so now we've been introduced to 3 of the 4 main cast. We have Jax, the one in front, the boy one with the anime hair. We have Izzy, the nerdy one. And we have JT, the main girl with the anime hair. So Mr. Lee approaches JT and her partner Mickey, who is actually the last anime character with the anime hair here on the front. And they're partners, but not in a romantic way. They're lab partners. But the girls are actually working on an anti-gravity device as their science fair project, whereas the boys are working on a time machine. So it's a very prestigious school. Mr. Lee leans down to 2 other students, Ted and William, like Bill and Ted. Yes, Shafi has also owned up to this. It's actually one of his more charming qualities is his insertion of other time travel tropes into his books. Guys, I shouldn't have to tell you this, Mr. Lee said, but if you're still bent on making a ray gun, I want no disintegrations. Jax laughed, but then scooted his chair closer to the girls. He bent close and whispered, an anti-gravity device? That's what your big secret was? JT smiled. I guess we should have told you guys sooner. After all, you guys did give us the idea. What? Jax said. When did we ever talk about this? Remember back when you and Izzy insisted that we watch those old Back to the Future movies with you? It's just coming after us, aren't you, Tim? Mr. Lee touches base with Jax and Izzy about their time machine, and he says this. His expression sober and Mr. Lee stooped low. Jax, I don't mean to offend you, but you know that what you're trying to do is what the world's greatest inventors have been unable to accomplish. So you can understand why I have my reservations about 2 sophomores doing it. Jax scowled and wanted to continue the discussion, but before he could formulate an objection, Mr. Lee moved on to another group of students. To me, this feels like code for what younger creationists are trying to do. They're trying to accomplish what the world's greatest scientists have been unable to do. And then the girls scooch over and decide to make a bet. After calling Back to the Future a lame movie, they decide to make a bet with the boys. And the bet is the one who wins the $50,000 scholarship, which is a prize for the science fair, has to buy the other one dinner, or the opposite. The loser has to buy the winner dinner. So not only do they not get the $50,000 scholarship, but they also have to buy the winners who have the $50,000 dinner. And then Jax looks at Izzy, whose nose has been buried in his calculations, but who is now listening intently to the exchange. Izzy nodded. Jax turned back to the girls and extended his hand. You're on, he said. In Chapter 2, Jax and Izzy go over to Jax's house to work on the time machine. Here's the manga picture that we get for this. And Jax is confronted by his mother in the dining room, and we get the following exchange. Was that Izzy? His mother asked. Yeah, he's on his way over. We've got to finish up our project and give it a test run tonight. Okay, so I guess Izzy was on his way. He hadn't yet arrived. I had assumed because he was in the car with Jax, but maybe this is unrelated. This is an unrelated picture. I'll be glad when you guys are finally done with that thing. You've been spending all your spare time in the garage. Mom, you know how important this is. I know, but you've been late for school. You've skipped church. I put shit. Is that what this is about? You want to have the church talk again? Jax said. Jax, I'm not trying to start an argument, but you used to love going to church and youth group, and now it's like pulling teeth to get you to go to either one. Look, Mom, Jax said, I know church has been really important to you since Dad died. Oh no, Dr. Tompkins. But I just don't get it. He never went, so why should I? Mrs. Thompson recoiled and stood speechless for a moment. That's not fair, she said. You know what's not fair? Jax said. That's, oh my God, that some all-powerful, loving God took Dad from us. That's what's not fair. Jax just invented the problem of evil. His mother's eyes welled up with tears. You don't think I miss your dad too? He was my husband, but I'm not going to live the rest of my life harboring bitterness towards God. You have to learn to let it go. Why should I? Jax said. What's God ever done for me? Jax spun around and stomped towards the door. Jax! He waved his free hand back at her. Not now, Mom. I have work to do. Evil secular work. We pan over and the boys are working on the time machine in Jax's garage. Jax is frustrated that everyone's doubting them, and he says, this idea of my dad's is the best he's ever had, because Jax's dad actually invented the idea of the time machine. It's just frustrating knowing that everyone doubts us. Izzy chuckled, especially JT, huh? Izzy's trying to get the hot goss. Spill the tea, Jax, come on. I don't know what you're talking about. Jax gave Izzy a warning glance to drop it. Oh, come on, Izzy said. You've had a thing for her for years, ever since we started at this school, and I know it just drives you crazy whenever you mess up in front of her. That's really why you're so frustrated now, because she doesn't think you can pull this off. Humph, Jax muttered and continued in the most convincing tone he could muster. We're just friends, that's it. Nothing more than friends. With a nod of mock understanding, Izzy went back towards his computer. If you say so. Jax tried to focus on the brackets, but after a few minutes he said, besides, she probably would just give me the same lectures my mom does. Izzy jolted. What are you talking about? Oh, JT. Yeah, Jax said. JT's mom leads a women's Bible study at her house, and my mom goes over there every Monday night. It's like they're all brainwashed to believe and say the same things. This is what me and my friends talk about when we're working on our garage time machines and bashing theists. Which is, of course, something that everyone does who isn't a theist. You know JT's not stupid, Izzy said. Don't you think she might have some good reasons for what she believes? She's not dumb, Jack said, but come on, are you saying you think there are good reasons to believe the Bible? It's wrong about all sorts of things. This is what Tim Shaffey thinks that non-theists talk about, by the way. Izzy shrugged. No, you know I don't buy into all that, but it seems to work for them, he paused. So if she believes all those things and you don't, why are you so interested in her? I told you we're just friends, Jack said. Then why did you bring it up again after I already dropped it? Jax opened his mouth but closed it again. Izzy is just getting in digs left and right here. But Izzy was right. He was smitten with JT and he didn't understand why. I don't know, he said at last. I just can't get her out of my mind. You know, she's cute, but not like she's drop-dead gorgeous. Oh my god. Oh my god, Jax. Okay, he's going for the negging strategy, I see. A true Sigma male move. She's always bugging me about youth group, and she prays before eating lunch every day. I hate that stuff, but there's just something about her. I do support this idea of boys sharing with one another, being there for the bros. I like that. Izzy slapped his knee. I knew it. Then why don't you just ask her out again? Again? A history. He shrugged. I asked Mickey to find out what she thinks about me. You did? That's hilarious, Izzy said. You're too scared to do it yourself now. Izzy's like... These guys have like a rough and tumble banter going on. Jax wanted to end the discussion as soon as possible. He glared at Izzy and then looked down at the bracket in his hand. We'd better get to work or we will never finish this. Meanwhile, at the exact same time, JT and Mickey, these two, the girls, if you will, are hanging out and spilling the hot goss themselves while they're working on their anti-gravity device in the form of a hoverboard. You just want Jax to come over, right? Mickey said. JT blushed. No, not really. I just want this thing to work. I'm already skipping youth group tonight for the first time in I don't know how long. Girl, admit it. You like him. This is true femoid dialogue from Tim Shaffey and Joe Westbrook. Come on, JT. I mean, he's cute, he's funny, he's smart, and he obviously likes you. JT laid down the wire she was working on and sat next to Mickey on the bed. She had known that this conversation was going to come sooner or later, but it didn't make it any easier. She offered a quick prayer. Lord, please give me the right words to say to her. Help her understand. Well, Mickey asked as she motioned with her hand to get JT to start talking. Well, JT grinned, it's obvious he's smart if he likes me. Her face straightened, but nothing could ever happen to us. Nothing could ever happen between us the way things are right now. What do you mean? What's wrong with him? The two of you would make a great couple and everyone knows it. I don't think so. He's one of my best friends, but you know, I'm a Christian and he's not, so it just wouldn't work. But forbidden love. Mickey quirked an eyebrow. I don't understand. What does being a Christian have to do with whether or not you go out with a guy? I mean, you're not one of those dating Jesus girls, are you? JT laughed. That is a funny phrase, but no, I'm not dating Jesus. But my beliefs have everything to do with who I would date. She took a breath before going on. Mickey, I never told you this, but Jax and I sort of dated back in 7th grade. What? Yes, obviously it wasn't anything serious. We went to a couple of movies together and that was it. She grabbed JT's hands. So what happened? You guys are obviously still close friends. Why not give it another shot? Well, basically he doesn't hold the same beliefs as I do, at least not anymore. What, because he doesn't go to your church, Mickey said? They go back and forth for a minute, and then Mickey says, well, if you ask me, I don't really blame him for being upset. I mean, think about what he's been through. Why would God allow his dad to be killed? Oh God, he was murdered. I would probably be mad at God too, if I believed in him. So what we've established so far, by the way, is that everyone besides JT is an evolutionist. That's coming later. I agree that it was natural for him to be upset, but he hasn't made an effort to work through it. Instead, he's used it as an excuse for rejecting God. It isn't God's fault that Jax's dad died, and there's no reason to blame him for that. You know the lab explosion was a freak accident. God didn't start it. Besides, Mickey looked up. Look, JT, I know you're really serious about this God stuff. Someday I promise I'll listen to what you have to say about it, but right now we gotta get this project done, and we only have 2 more days. I like Mickey's strap there. She shuts down the conversation of the problem of evil. These guys are both just really getting into it. These both groups are really getting into it for, for casual convo hangouts with the boys and girls. We're back with the boys and they decide to do a test run. So they decide to go back to 70 million BC and they get their little specific destination coordinates and we get the countdown, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then we get a fake out, right? For chapter 3, it starts off with Jax and Izzy being like, oh my God, we made it. And they step out of their, time machine car. Because I forgot to mention this, but the time machine is shaped like a car. They step out of it into this, beautiful vegetation. They're like, oh my God, we made it. But then Jack starts like disintegrating, and then he wakes up in Miss Patterson's English class and gets really mad because I can't believe last night didn't work. So they talk with Mr. Lee, and Mr. Lee is like, oh, have you tried, maybe reconfiguring the flux capacitor or something along those lines? And they're like, oh no, I guess we'll go back home and try it again tonight. So they resolve to do that, and we're back in the garage again. So, anything going on in the teen zone? Izzy asked Jax as they exited the library. They turned left down the sidewalk, but before Jax could respond, they had to dodge a young couple who were trying to take a selfie. It's Tim Shaffey summarizing what a selfie is. So this is before they've actually gotten back to the garage, and together they talk about how Miss Jacobs has given them an assignment, and the assignment is on ancient Egypt. So they're like, well, if we can't go back and see a dinosaur, which was their initial idea to go back 70 million years, they're like, let's go back 4,500 years to ancient Egypt, and then we'll kill two birds with one stone. We'll be able to complete our assignment, and we will have created one of the most important discoveries, important inventions of all of human history. And so they decide to do that. They set it up, and they blast off into the past. So you can probably guess what's going to happen here. They're going to go back 4,500 years, and then they're going to find the dinosaurs that they're looking for, even though it's 4,500 years ago. And they're going to find them living alongside humans like the ancient Egyptians, because this is what young Earth creationists believe. They believe that everything was created 6,000 years ago, and there was a global flood of Noah 4,400 years ago. So 4,500 years ago, all of these prehistoric animals, from stuff in the Holocene to general Cenozoic stuff, mammoths, saber-toothed cats, calicotheres, stuff like dinosaurs from the Mesozoic, and even earlier things like Dunkleosteus and Anomalocaris from the Devonian and Cambrian, all lived just at the same time as each other and as people. So when they go back 4,500 years ago, they're going to see all this stuff, be like, wait, we didn't go back millions of years. Why are there dinosaurs here? And then boom, creationism confirmed. Immediately when they arrive, they are accosted by a giant griffin fly, which is the dragonflies that lived during the Carboniferous. They're like a foot wide. And they go, Izzy put his hands on the top of his head and looked up. Man, can you believe it? We really did it. We may not be in Egypt, but that dragonfly is proof that we went back in time. That giant dragonfly is proof we went back in time. Jack stopped, leaning forward, and grabbed his knees. We went back in time. He took a deep breath and looked up at Izzy. It really worked, didn't it? Izzy put a hand on Jax's shoulder. This is the greatest invention ever. Yeah, this is awesome, Jax laughed. We're gonna win the science fair for sure. They celebrated with a high five, and Jax imagined all the fame and fortune that awaited him. He was snapped back to reality by a pungent odor. The boys realize that they are in an ancient swamp, ancient by creationist standards, and they stumble across a sleeping Allosaurus and are sort of ambushed, I guess, by a smaller Allosaurus that comes out of the forest and starts to chase them. And that's where we get this picture of Jax running. In the pursuit, Jax and Izzy are split up, with Jax running one way and Izzy running the other, and Izzy scampers up a tree, leaving Jax basically alone to deal with this Allosauric menace. So Jax manages to evade the Allosaurus, and in a brief moment of respite from being hunted down by an ancient theropod, he's like, I've got an idea, it just might work. So that ends the chapter, and chapter 6 starts with Mickey and JT finally figuring out how to work their hoverboard, but they only managed to get it to work on a small scale. So they've got a mini hoverboard with a little teddy bear sitting on top of it. And while they're discussing sort of how to jack up the octane here and get a larger hoverboard working, we get this line. Seconds later, Jax stood in the doorway, panting, pale-faced, streaked with dirt, and looking desperate. Did you get that thing working yet? He asked. And I just put, he went back? That was his bright idea? He left Izzy in the distant past, literally up a tree, being hunted by, giant dinosaurs that want to eat him. And Jax is like, I've got an idea. I'll leave. So he goes back in time, and or back forward in time, back to the future, if you will. And Mickey goes, nice to see you too. And that's none of your business. You'll just have to wait until tomorrow, and you guys and I go up against one another at the science fair, blah, blah, blah. And then Jax, without elaboration, is like, guys, I'm serious. I need to know right now whether or not it's working. He's not like, hey, listen, here's the situation. Come with me. I need your help. He's like doing the rom-com thing. Why should we tell you? Mickey asked. Yeah, and why are you acting so frantic? Said JC. I'm sorry, I wasn't trying to be rude, but it's about Izzy. He needs our help. Why, what happened, JT said, pointing at a long scratch on his arm. And what happened to you? You wouldn't believe me if I told you, and you're gonna tell me if that thing works, right? He pushed past the two of them. Does it work? Jax sees that they got the hoverboard working, and before explaining what's going on, makes them follow him back to the garage where he has parked the time machine. So Mickey's like, tell us what all this is about, and Jax basically says, well, last night we were trying to go back 70 million years so we could see a dinosaur, and as you know, nothing happened. The machine didn't work, so on our way home last night, I had the idea to go back 4,500 years to see the construction of the pyramids. We thought we could use it as research for our Egyptian paper. After double checking everything, we tried the machine again. This time it worked, except it didn't take us back 4,500 years. It must have gone back 70 million. It's like the computer didn't clear out the old number. And then JT takes this opportunity to go, 70 million years, JC said with a strong amount of doubt in her voice. How would you even know what year it was? Because JT is, of course, a resident young Earth creationist. So she's taking this critical moment to go, are you sure? Were you there? Because we were chased by a real-life dinosaur. That's why Izzy needs our help, Jack said. What do you mean? Where is he anyways? He's up in the branches of a tree 70 million years ago, Jack said. You mean you just left him there? Mickey asked. Yes, thank you, Mickey, the voice of reason. So after everyone calms down, they're like, all right, we'll all go together and we will use the hoverboard to fly up into the tree and rescue Izzy. But before they do, they have to be able to basically charge enough power to go to the time machine to get it back in time. And Jax talks about how that was the whole reason his dad couldn't get it to work, because he couldn't get, a big enough solar cell, or uses some kind of terminology like that to actually make the time machine work. And then he talks about how what killed his dad was this explosion at the lab, and everyone is suspecting sort of foul play. It was a solar cell. And then they use the solar cell to power up the time machine and get ready to go. Mickey, JT, and Jax get in the car, and then JT prays before they hit the enter button, and there's a line where, Jax is like, I can't believe she would pray. I would pray too if I thought it would do any good. And they head back in time to rescue Izzy from the Allosaurus. Okay, to make a long story short, they make it back in time, take the hoverboard over to rescue Izzy, rescue him, but then when they're getting ready to head back forward in time, they realize the hoverboard drained the batteries from the solar cell, and now they have to spend the night in the past before they can recharge the solar cell once the sun comes back up in the morning, and head back, making it to school and presumably the science fair on time. As the gang is getting ready to go to sleep, they discuss the problems that they have. One, getting back forward in time, and two, what are they going to do? Because they're going to have to show Jax's dead dad's secret solar cell that powers the time machine in order to show that the machine works and actually win the science fair. This kind of feels like something that they would have discussed beforehand, but they didn't. It's fine. It is what it is. So Jax goes to sleep angry, leaving JT and Mickey to have a conversation. So JT is looking up at the stars, and she says, it says, for several minutes no one spoke. JT stared up at the stars and marveled at the beauty of the night sky, unhindered by man-made lights. She began to think of Psalm 8:3-4. When I consider the heavens, the works of your fingers, the moon and the stars which you've set in place, what is man that you are mindful of him? She began to pray silently. Dear God, thank you so much for protecting everyone tonight, especially Jax and Izzy, but not Mickey. Thank you for your beautiful creation and caring so much about you, for loving us even though we don't deserve it. Lord, please take away Jax's bitterness towards you. Help him understand that you love him. And JT, Mickey said, never mind. JT opened her eyes. What? Oh, it was nothing, Mickey said. No, it was something. You know that you can't do that to me. Now I'm curious. What do you want? Mickey rolled her eyes to the side and looked at her friend. Well, I was just going to ask how you were doing with all of this. All of what? JT said when she turned to look at Mickey. Mickey looked down at the ground. You know, she said, we're 70 million years in the past. Doesn't that go against everything you believe? I mean, doesn't the Bible teach that the earth is only 6,000 years old? So here we have the bugaboo, the thing that I hate that they do. Tim Shaffey and Joe Westbrook have two ideas of what it means to be, a human. You can believe that the Bible is literally true and everything should be read in the word-for-word, literal English way, and thus that the earth is 6,000 years old, or you are a cold-hearted evolutionist, atheist, naturalist who doesn't have any theistic views whatsoever. This is silly, especially because most Christians in the United States accept evolution in the age of the earth and in many other places as well. So, but they gotta turn it into a dichotomy, or else they seem far less reasonable to the ones that already agree with them. How do you know we're 70 million years in the past? JT said. Mickey looked JT in the eyes. Do you honestly have to ask that? You saw that dinosaur. Everyone knows they went extinct 65 million years ago. Look, JT said, just because we saw a dinosaur doesn't mean that we're millions of years in the past. From a biblical perspective, God made all the land animals, including dinosaurs, on the sixth day. And you're right, the Bible does teach that he did that about 6,000 years ago. You expect me to believe that, don't you? Mickey said. Every scientist knows that dinosaurs lived millions of years ago. We even have the fossils to prove it. I thought you were smarter than that. JT sat up and took a deep breath. Mickey, it's not a matter of intelligence. It's about our starting points, our presuppositions. We just created hover technology by using scientists. I worked out that problem right alongside you, and I didn't have to give up my belief in the Bible to do science. Now Mickey was sitting. But you're rejecting what every scientist knows to be true. No, I'm not, JT said. First of all, there are many scientists who believe exactly what the Bible teaches about the age of the Earth. So that's not even a good argument. Second, even if all scientists did believe that the Earth was millions of years old, it wouldn't matter. Truth is not decided by the popular vote. And while I do stutter when I'm reading, that one was not me. Even all scientists, not even if all scientists. It's just a typo. I always think this is a little bit funny, this dichotomy of some scientists are young earth creationists, so you should be one too. And then you're like, but most aren't. And then they're like, well, you can't trust the popular vote among scientists. It feels a little goofy to me, but I've talked about that ad nauseum in other places on this channel. I still don't see how you can really believe what the Bible says. Everyone knows it's full of errors, especially on this topic, Mickey said. Because, the Bible is like chock full of, massive monographs on how old the earth is and how many dinosaurs are present and where they lived and how they lived alongside humans. And this definitely isn't just, massive inference on behalf of the young earth creationists. Silently thanking her youth pastor for his lessons on these types of arguments, apologetics, he called them, JT covered her legs with the corner of the blanket. Let's go back to your original question about how far back in time we are. Izzy, what time period did you program the time machine to go to tonight? Izzy hesitated before answering. 4,500 years ago. But it must have taken us back 70 million years, which was the setting from the night before. I mean, look around. This place doesn't look like Egypt. It looks more like South Dakota. JT cocked her head. How would you even know what those places looked like that long ago? They wouldn't be anything like they are today. He looked thoughtful. Yeah, that's true. I wonder if Tim Shaffey and Joe Westbrook even know about the field of, paleo-environmental reconstruction or geochronology or many of these different ideas that sort of converge on how we reconstruct what past environments looked like using things like chemistry, the physics of the rock, sedimentation rates, and isotopic ratios. So then the main reason you think we're 70 million years in the past is because there are dinosaurs here. Mickey hesitated. I guess so. What a nice straw man you guys have set up there. Well, Izzy says that he programmed the machine for 4,500 years ago. That doesn't prove anything. He also said that he must have used the settings from the night before. JT said nothing for a moment, praying silently. Lord, help me find a way to show them the truth of your word. Then she looked at Mickey. Dinosaurs can be explained from a biblical timescale too. It doesn't require millions of years to make them make sense. JT, look, I know you really believe this stuff, but we go to a top science school, one of the best in the country, and we have some of the best science teachers in the world. Are you going to tell me that they're all ignorant? I'm only saying that they probably have only been taught one way of looking at the world. They've never learned to question what they were being taught. From a biblical perspective, most of the fossils we find in the rock layers were laid down by the flood of Noah's day. This would include dinosaurs, which is the main reason they aren't alive anymore. Wait, you believe in Noah's Ark too? Mickey laughed. Everybody knows that thing is a myth. I can't believe someone as smart as you could believe this stuff. Look, I don't have all the answers, and I never claimed I did. My youth pastor has studied this topic for years. Ah, yes. A doctor in his field. You should come with me to talk to him. Okay, a quick pause too. I know those of you who've been on the channel for a while know, the sort of in-depth reasons why the Noachian deluge is impossible, but just in the context of this text. Young Earth creationists believe that dinosaurs came on the Ark, so why is the flood the reason that they are extinct? Why bring them on the Ark if they're simply going to go extinct so shortly afterwards? We've talked about how the dimensions of the Ark that are actually given biblically would be incapable of holding Not just the animals, if we're taking them at the species level, which AIG tends to not. They argue that it's at the family level, but it wouldn't be able to hold all the food to feed all of these animals. Even with their conservative estimates, there's not enough space to put all the alfalfa on there just for the elephants, the proboscideans, let alone all of the other herbivores. It's going to be a very difficult case to make, which is why they rarely speak on the specifics like that. Mickey responds by saying, "I don't think so. I highly doubt your youth pastor knows more about this subject than all our teachers. What a banger." This wasn't going as well as she had hoped. JT knew that Pastor Rich could help Mickey understand what she was trying to tell her. She looked at the night sky again, and then an idea popped into her mind. "That's it. Mickey, if I could prove to you right now that we aren't 70 million years in the past, would you come with me to talk to my youth pastor?" "If you could prove to me right now," Mickey repeated slowly. "Sure, if you could prove it to me right now, that I would go and talk to your youth pastor." "What about you, Izzy? Would you be willing to come too?" "I guess so, but I don't know how you plan to prove your point." "All right, here goes." JT laid back down and pointed up. "Look at the stars. What do you see?" "Come on," Mickey said impatiently as she lay down. "We see stars. Don't give us that intelligent design stuff, because scientists have shown how stars can form without the help of a creator." "No, just give me a minute. I wasn't going there. We were talking about the constellations." And then she makes the case that because they're looking up at the night sky that looks very similar to the night sky back at home, that they aren't 70 million years in the past. That's a good case to make, except we haven't lived this scenario. This is completely inapplicable to the modern day and doesn't help young Earth creationism, because we haven't created a time machine to go 4,500 years into the past, see dinosaurs, and then show that we're only truly 4,500 years in the past, revealing that dinosaurs lived 4,500 years ago, and thus either the Noachian deluge and young Earth creationism is correct, or dinosaurs lived into the very recent past and weren't entirely wiped out by the Chicxulub impactor event. None of that has happened. It is a fiction. So this isn't helpful as a Tim Shaffy, see why he is right. So now, poor Mickey and poor Izzy do have to attend a youth group with JT to talk to Pastor Rich about the age of the Earth, who again does in fact know better than every scientist in the Truth Chronicles universe, which is fascinating to say the least. So the next morning, Jax and JT sneak off together and they catch a view of a family of Parasaurolophuses drinking from a river, which is cute. And then they realize by looking at their watches that time has actually continued to tick back home and it's almost time for school. So they need to get back to the present like ASAP. So they get the others and they take the time machine back to the present in order to make the science fair on time. There's also this line before they leave, which I just think is funny. Jax was also thinking about the beautiful scenery sitting immediately to his left, referring to JT. Even though JT had turned into one of those Jesus freaks, as he called them, Jax came up with that. He still felt drawn to her. So again, they make it back to the present, and they've also agreed amongst themselves that they're going to have Mr. Lee come over to Jax's house to see the time machine instead of bringing it into the public eye, so that they don't accidentally reveal the secret of the superpowered solar cell and bust Jax and his mom for what their father discovered, for what his father and Ellen, the mother's husband, discovered. I almost said wife. That'd be a little too progressive, I think. And then they're bummed when they walk into the science fair because they're like, man, it really sucks that we couldn't have shown our time machine, but at least the hoverboard technology might win. At least the girls might get the scholarship. The judges who come from, great institutions like MIT are so impressed with the girls' hoverboard, even though they brought to show the mini one with the little bear sitting on the hoverboard. And then Ted and William, or Bill and Ted, as Shaffy has again confirmed, accidentally shoot their disintegration ray at the bear and their little hoverboard, destroying them instantly. They still come in first place, but we get this drawing of Mickey, Dommy Mommy over here, getting ready to kill Ted or Bill. I can't remember which. I think it was Ted. But they do win, so they get the scholarship. Yay for them. So the kids, the teens, they go to celebrate at a place called Bits and Bites, where Jax is clearly upset based off of what Izzy says. "I thought you were starving. How come you only ordered a megabyte?" Izzy asked, referring to the half-pound burger. "Usually you order the gigabyte," which I just liked that. I like that bit of world building. But Jax is still upset, so eventually he and JT have a conversation. They argue, and at one point in the conversation, JT calls him by his full name, Jackson Thompson, but it's Jackson, Jaxon, which I just thought was kind of funny. Jackson Thompson, I know you better than that. I can tell when something's bothering you. Come on, you can tell me. Jax went silent, looking down at his feet. You've been acting different ever since last night when we were looking at the stars. At first I thought you were mad about not being able to enter the science fair, but I don't think that's it. What's going on? JT said. Jax let out a sigh of defeat and running his fingers through his spiked hair, and then said, all right, I'll tell you, but promise me you'll let me finish what I have to say before you say anything, okay? JT wasn't sure what he was going to say, but she needed to know what was wrong. All right, I promise. Oh, and promise me that no matter what I say, you won't tell anyone, not even Mickey or Izzy, and that we'll still be friends. That's a tall order. What if he was just like, I killed my dad? I think I would have to tell someone. Okay, I promise. What's going on? Jax quickly looked up at her and then back down. JT, the past day has easily been one of the greatest in my life. Me too, she said, and then apologized. I'm sorry, I said I wouldn't interrupt. Go ahead. That's okay, just don't let it happen again, or else. He grinned. Oh, he will kill again. To say that we had an excellent adventure would be an understatement of gigantic proportions. But no matter how fun it was, oh, I get it, like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, but no matter how exciting, I feel terrible. He looked up at her. She wasn't sure where he was going with this, and made an expression that seemed to ask why. All right, I'll just say it, but remember what you promised. Jax looked back down and took a couple of deep breaths. JT, you mean more to me than anything in the world. I would have done anything for you. Seeing you win the science fair was better than winning it myself. What I'm trying to say is, he paused again and then looked right at her. JT, I love you. JT's heart sank. She feared this conversation would take place. I also just put question mark. JT's heart sank. She feared that this conversation would take place. She started to open her mouth, but he cut her off. I'm not sure how you feel about me, but before you say anything, I need to finish. I was afraid to talk to you about this, but last night's events kind of forced this upon us. So he goes on and talking about how much he loves her and all this stuff. And then JT is just like, Jax, she started slowly, you're one of my best friends, and I don't ever want anything to come between us, but I've thought this through, and those of you at home probably know what she's going to say. She goes, I already have an answer. He shut his eyes tightly. And I cannot go out with you at this time. That's what she says. I can't go out with you at this time. Shake the magic 8-ball. Ask again later. She sniffled and tried to control her emotions, but nothing helped. I know this is going to be hard for you to hear, and I don't want to hurt your feelings. But she goes on to basically say, you know I'm a Christian, and you know that I take my faith very seriously. I can't date somebody just to date. If I'm going to date somebody, then it has to be someone I can imagine spending the rest of my life with. And right now, because of how you feel about God, that person can't be you. His face reddened and he turned to face her. How can you believe in a God that lets so many awful things happen in this world? Where was God when my dad died? How could he let that happen? His voice grew louder and more forceful with each question. Lord, please help me, thought JT. Jack's God didn't kill your dad. You need to stop blaming him. God, this is so harsh. He slammed his hand on the porch. Why should I? If he loves everyone like the Bible says and he's all powerful like the Bible says, then he should have prevented the explosion. Again, Jax has discovered the problem of evil and it's not going well. By the way, here's our illustration for this of Jax yelling at a crying JT. Look, I don't pretend to know how much pain you've gone through, because I don't. It hurts me to see you hurting, JT said, placing her hand on his. I just wish I could take the pain away from you. But only Jesus can do that. This is like the joke book that you would get from like Family Guy or American Dad or South Park of like what Christian media is like, because it's not all bad like this. C.S. Lewis, right? But this is a little heavy-handed to the point where like you're wearing the Infinity Gauntlet, that kind of heavy-handed. Jax yanked his hand away. Whatever. He's the one that caused my pain. He took my dad away from me, and now he's taking you away from me. Please help me get through to him, JT thought, praying. You can't keep blaming God for your dad's death. The Bible tells us that God made a perfect world, that there was no death, suffering, disease, or bloodshed when he made it. It was perfect. Then Adam and Eve messed things up. When they sinned, they wrecked God's perfect world, and the world was cursed because of their actions. Ever since then, good things and bad things have happened to good people and bad people. So it's not God's fault that there's so much suffering in the world. It's our fault. Just imagine telling someone this, right? Like you're a teenager and you profess your love to your significant other, and then they start doing a text-to-speech monologue on the Genesis apologetics or Answers in Genesis homepage telling you about original sin. In that case, at least I would be thinking, like, bullet dodged, you know? JT, that's a nice story, but that's all it is. It's just a story. Scientists have shown that Genesis is wrong about all of that. His phone rang in his pocket, but he ignored it. That's where you're wrong, JT said. In fact, we proved last night that the Bible is right. What are you talking about? Who proved it and how? Jack said. She remembered he'd missed out on the debate about constellations, and so she recounted it to him. That's all very interesting, he said as he began to cool off. But then he said, I'm not convinced. Her tears had stopped, because men don't cry, and she now had on her game face. As much as her feelings were in the conflict, she needed Jack to understand this one important point. I don't have all the answers, she said, but I do know the Bible is true. We can trust what God says. And that pretty much sums up, the whole problem, doesn't it? The whole issue with young earth creationism is right there, pretty well summed up. Can you do something for me? What? I want you to come to my youth group with me on Wednesday. Izzy and Mickey are coming, and I want you to talk to Pastor Rich after the meeting. He can do a much better job of answering your questions than I can. Plus, there won't be such an emotional battle going on. Dude, you just, rejected him. I don't really know if I'd call that an emotional battle so much as, an emotional execution. He paused, rubbing his temples. Let me think about it. So then he finally interrupts the conversation to take the phone call from his mom, who's been over and over again trying to call him. And we are not sort of clued in as to what happened. Jax just runs off in a huff. He's freaking out. Maybe his dad, Dr. Jeffrey Tompkins, has shown back up at the garage. We're not really sure. And JT hugs her mom because she's so sad. And lastly, in the epilogue, it is revealed that Jax's father, Dr. Jeffrey Tompkins, is in fact alive, and he's being held captive by someone who, quote, sounded Latin American, and being forced to build some kind of diabolical machine that we are not clued in on. And then it ends. It ends on a cliffhanger. Of course, this is a very short book, but the next text in the series is called The Truth Chronicles, Book 2, The Contest, which we will read next. This video is already long enough, so I guess we're really gonna have to do a video per book, which is really funny to think about. My thoughts on the Truth Chronicles Book 1, The Time Machine, there's really not a lot of meat to go off of, especially because the main argument in favor of young earth creationism requires actual evidence for young earth creationism to actually work. Obviously, JT's constellation argument works because they did actually go back in time. This would be like if a flat earther were to try to prove flat earth by taking someone up in a spaceship and it just proves that they are right, and then the globe head is trying to rationalize how they could still be correct. Yeah, if you have evidence for something, you can argue that you're right. The problem is in real life, there is no support for young earth creationism. They talk a little bit about the Noachian deluge, but obviously the Noachian deluge, the main argument against it is the fact that to move all of the continents into their current position from a Pangea supercontinent, which is something that Tim Shaffy's employer's Answers in Genesis accept happened during the flood, you're going to create enough heat to vaporize the granitic crust of the earth just from the friction atop the mantle, but you also have to do things like speed up radioactive decay, which is another couple of vaporizations of the granite crust of the earth. I'm sure we're going to have a lot more to work with the scientific arguments that they make once we get into book 2. I pre-read this one. I don't know if I'm going to pre-read the other ones or not. I'm on the fence about it because on one hand, it gives me a way to kind of get my ideas together, synthesize my ideas. But on the other hand, I do like the idea of sort of authentic reactions. So let me know what you think, even though I'll probably have already decided and started recording by then. I think it's a little bit scary that these books are being marketed to kids already, because again, it gives them this false impression that there's kind of a leg to stand on with young earth creationism, one that requires a fictional world, literally a fictional universe to make an argument for. I think the art is okay, if a little bit, again, off the shelves of Barnes & Noble, how to draw anime-ish. The characters, they're fine. They're really straw man-y. I mean, you have the anime main character who hates God. He's the straw man caricature of the atheist. that has turned away from God because he hates him because some bad thing has happened to him. The virtuous JT, the sassy Mickey, who will probably, if I had to guess, be the last one to come around because I'm sure this is going to be a conversion story for all of them. And then the nerdy one, which is just Izzy. That's his whole personality. He's the nerd. But I don't really plan for this series to be like a serious deep dive into the science claims of the books because they're written for kids. We'll probably dabble in that, but I have plenty in the rest of my channel to get into that. Really, this is meant for entertainment value and like media critique. So I'm looking forward to the next episode with dread in my heart. In the meantime, I do hope that you, my gentle, of course, very modern apes, do take care of yourselves.